We live in a world where attention is currency. Everyone is posting. Everyone is watching. Everyone is talking. But here's the truth that many don't want to hear. Nobody cares as much as you think they do. Not about your struggles, not about your excuses, not even about your dreams. And before you let that harden your heart, before you let it push you into bitterness, let's reframe it. It's not that people are cruel. It's that they're busy fighting their own battles, carrying their own weight, chasing their own sense of significance. So when we expect others to applaud us, validate us, motivate us, we set ourselves up for disappointment. Because if your fuel is applause, you will run out of gas when the silence comes. That's why you must work hard, not because someone is watching, but because you owe it to yourself. See, hard work isn't just about hustle, it's about ownership. It's about saying, I will take responsibility for where I am and where I want to go. No more blame, no more waiting for the perfect conditions. The truth is, your story will either be written by your discipline or your distractions. We all crave validation. It's human. We want to be seen, appreciated, recognized. From the moment we're children, we're rewarded for the good and corrected for the bad. Over time, we start to believe that our worth is measured by the approval of others, that someone else must validate our effort for it to mean something. But if you're serious about building something great, you have to let go of that need. You have to understand this hard truth. The world isn't going to cheer you on every time you take a step forward. In fact, most of the time it will be silent. And that silence, that's your test. When you stop expecting validation, you shift from performing to progressing. You stop doing things to be seen, and you start doing them because they matter. This is where real growth begins, in the moments when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when you're grinding in obscurity. The mistake too many people make is that they wait. They wait for someone to tell them they're good enough, smart enough, talented enough. They wait for support before they begin. But what they don't realize is that waiting for validation is just another form of procrastination. It's fear in disguise. The truth is, nobody is coming to give you permission. Nobody is coming to reassure you every step of the way. If you want something, you have to go get it. Without a spotlight, without applause, without a pat on the back. You have to learn to be your own encourager, your own motivator, your own source of belief. Because if your self-worth is attached to someone else's opinion, then your growth will always be limited. It will stop the moment people stop clapping. And that's dangerous. People aren't obligated to understand your journey. They're not required to support your vision. Not because they don't care, but because it's not theirs. Your vision was given to you, not to them. That's why it's your responsibility to protect it, nurture it, and pursue it, regardless of how many people validate you along the way. The most successful people in the world didn't wait to be discovered. They built themselves in the dark. They worked while being underestimated, overlooked, and even criticized. And that work, the work done without recognition, is what made them strong. When you release the need for validation, you free yourself. You no longer need likes, views, or followers to measure your progress. You stop comparing your behind the scenes with everyone else's highlight reel. Instead, you become focused on the process, the daily effort, the quiet consistency, the small wins that compound over time. You begin to lead yourself, and that's where confidence comes from. Not from praise, but from keeping the promises you make to yourself. Letting go of validation also makes you more resilient. When you're not dependent on praise, you're not destroyed by criticism. You learn to listen, to reflect, to grow, but you don't crumble every time someone doesn't approve. You develop an inner compass. You trust your instincts more. You make decisions based on values, not on popularity. That's rare, and that's powerful. This shift doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to retrain your mind to stop looking for reassurance and start looking inward. But every time you choose to keep going without feedback, you build strength. Every time you show up without applause, you gain self-respect. And every time you choose discipline over attention, you separate yourself from the crowd. So stop waiting, stop performing, stop needing someone to tell you you're worthy. You already are. Your work has value, even if it's not trending. Your voice matters, even if it's not viral. Your effort is enough, even if no one notices it today. Because what you're building in private will speak loudly in public one day, not because you asked for validation, but because you didn't need it. Work in silence. Let results make the noise. Keep showing up. Keep doing the work. And most importantly, keep growing for you. Not for their approval, but for your purpose. There comes a moment in everyone's life when they have to choose between continuing to blame the world or finally taking full ownership of their journey. It's one of the hardest choices to make, not because it's complicated, but because it requires honesty. It means confronting yourself, your habits, your past, and your mindset. It means admitting that while you may not be responsible for everything that's happened to you, you are absolutely responsible for what you do next. Taking ownership is not about guilt or shame, it's about power. Because when you say, this is my life and I'm in charge, you take your power back from every person, excuse, and circumstance that's held it hostage. You stop waiting for someone to save you. You stop hoping that the right job, relationship, or moment will magically change your life. You begin to realize that nothing changes until you do. There's a subtle but powerful shift that happens when you start living like everything is your responsibility. You start paying attention. You stop letting time slip by. You start asking better questions like, what can I learn from this? Instead of, why is this happening to me? You begin to see every situation, even the painful ones, as something that can shape you rather than break you. It's easy to fall into a victim mindset. It's comfortable to believe that life is unfair and that you're just a product of circumstances, and maybe in some ways you are, but if that's where your thinking ends, you'll never move forward. Ownership means you don't get to hide behind your past anymore. It means taking a long, hard look in the mirror and asking, what's my role in this? What can I do better? How can I grow from here? Owning your journey doesn't mean doing it alone. It doesn't mean never needing help or never struggling. But it does mean you stop blaming. You stop pointing fingers. You stop giving your power away to what happened, to who left, to who didn't believe in you. Because the longer you stay in blame, the longer you delay your breakthrough. People who take ownership don't wait for motivation to strike. They build discipline. They don't rely on perfect circumstances. They find a way. They don't need guarantees. They take risks. They are driven not by comfort, but by conviction. That's the difference between someone who talks about their dreams and someone who builds them. You can tell when someone has taken full ownership of their life. They're not reactive. They're intentional. They don't talk about what they're going to do. They're already doing it. They're not easily shaken by failure because they see failure as part of the path. And they don't waste time comparing themselves to others because they're focused on improving their own lane. Taking ownership also means forgiving yourself. You can't lead yourself forward if you're still punishing yourself for the past. Let go of the version of you that didn't know better. Let go of the choices that came from pain, fear, or confusion. Growth isn't about perfection, it's about responsibility. It's about saying, I may not have started in the best place, but I get to decide where I go from here. No one is going to hand you the life you want. That's your job. Your journey is yours. Your pace is yours. Your lessons are yours. And the sooner you embrace that, the freer you become. Free from blame, free from excuses, free from the need for anyone else to make it happen for you. This is your wake-up call, not to hustle harder for others, but to rise higher for yourself, to own your choices, to own your mindset, to own your growth. When you do that, you start to realize just how capable you really are. You stop waiting for someone to open the door, and you start building your own. Own your time, own your energy, own your mistakes, own your potential, and most importantly, own your future, because no one is coming to save you. But the good news is, you don't need them to. You already have everything you need. All that's left is for you to take control and begin. In a world obsessed with visibility, it's easy to believe that performance is everything. The spotlight, the likes, the applause, it all creates the illusion that being seen is the same as being successful. But the truth is, real success has very little to do with how you perform when people are watching. It has everything to do with what you do when they're not. That's where discipline separates the committed from the casual. Discipline is what sustains you long after the motivation fades. It's what builds greatness quietly while the world is distracted by noise. Performance can be powerful, but it's fleeting. It's a moment. Discipline, on the other hand, is a system. It's the unseen structure that keeps you moving forward. It's waking up early when you'd rather sleep. It's practicing the same skill for the 100th time when no one's clapping. It's choosing the hard right over the easy wrong. Not once, but again and again. That's where growth happens. That's where trust in yourself is built. Many people chase moments of performance. They want to be impressive. They want to shine. And there's nothing wrong with that until performance becomes a substitute for progress. The danger is when you start prioritizing how you look over who you are. When you're more focused on crafting the perfect image than doing the real work. Because eventually, performance without discipline will collapse. It may take time, but without a strong foundation, the pressure will reveal what's underneath. Discipline isn't glamorous. It's repetitive. It's often thankless, but it builds strength. It creates character. Discipline is what carries you through the days when everything feels heavy, when doubt creeps in, when progress feels invisible. It becomes your anchor. And over time, it transforms you into someone reliable, someone who can be counted on, not just to start things, but to finish them. What's powerful about discipline is that it doesn't care how you feel. It shows up anyway. It doesn't rely on the perfect mood or the right conditions. It acts. Discipline says, I don't need to want to, I just need to do it. That mindset changes everything. Because when you let feelings dictate your actions, you'll be inconsistent. But when you let discipline lead, you'll be dependable. Performance is for the crowd. Discipline is for the mission. If your only goal is to impress others, you'll burn out chasing attention. But if your goal is to grow, to serve, to become the best version of yourself, then discipline is your greatest ally. It doesn't make things easier, it makes you stronger. And that's what creates long-term impact. Think about the people you admire most. Chances are they didn't get where they are just by being talented. They got there by showing up consistently, persistently, quietly. Talent may open the door, but discipline is what keeps you in the room. It's what allows you to evolve, to rise after failure, to outlast obstacles, to earn respect, not demand it. There's a simple question you can ask yourself each day. Am I being disciplined or am I just performing? One leads to growth, the other leads to burnout. One builds inner confidence, the other feeds temporary applause. And if you're serious about building a life of purpose, you must choose the path of discipline, even when it's invisible, even when it's boring. Discipline also builds freedom. At first, that sounds like a contradiction, but the more disciplined you are, the more control you have over your time, your energy, your direction. It gives you freedom from regret, freedom from chaos, freedom from constantly reacting to life because you've already decided how you're going to show up. That's not restriction, that's power. The world doesn't need more performers, it needs more builders. People willing to dig deep, stay the course, and keep showing up, whether the world notices or not. Because it's not what you do once in front of everyone that defines you, it's what you do daily, in silence, that shapes your future. So show up. Be consistent. Honor your word, not because someone's watching, but because that's who you are. Choose discipline over performance, process over perfection, purpose over popularity. One fades, the other lasts. In a world filled with distractions, comparisons, and noise, the greatest pursuit you can embark on is not trying to control others, outperform competitors, or impress the crowd. It's mastering yourself. Self-mastery is the foundation of everything meaningful. It's not about perfection or dominance. It's about understanding who you are, where you're headed, and becoming disciplined enough to stay aligned with that path no matter what comes your way. Most people spend their lives reacting. They react to stress, to fear, to opinions, to failure. But self-mastery flips that. It turns reaction into intention. Instead of being pushed around by life, you become someone who moves with purpose. You stop chasing validation and start building internal standards. You stop being defined by outcomes and start being defined by your values. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Mastering yourself means facing your own patterns, your habits, your impulses, your weaknesses. It means becoming brutally honest about where you sabotage your own growth. And more importantly, it means having the humility to change. Not once, but continuously. Growth isn't a destination, it's a commitment. And self-mastery requires that commitment every single day. It starts with awareness. You cannot master what you're unwilling to observe. Most people are strangers to their own minds. They react emotionally without questioning why. They repeat destructive cycles and call it bad luck. But self-mastery demands that you pause, reflect, and learn from yourself. Why do you do what you do? What triggers you? What patterns do you fall into when you're stressed, tired, or afraid? When you start answering those questions, you begin to regain control. But awareness alone isn't enough. You need discipline. Because once you see the pattern, the real work begins, changing it. That takes effort. It takes saying no to the easy route. It takes showing up for yourself long after the excitement wears off. Self-mastery is built through repetition. It's built through choosing what's right over what's comfortable. Not once, but repeatedly. Especially on the days when no one's watching and no one's clapping. One of the most overlooked aspects of self-mastery is emotional control. It's not about suppressing your emotions or pretending to be unaffected. It's about learning how to respond rather than react. It's recognizing that anger, envy, and fear are not your enemies. They're signals. But you decide how to interpret them. You decide how to act. Mastery means owning your emotions instead of being owned by them. Another critical piece is managing your inner dialogue. The way you speak to yourself matters more than most realize. Self-mastery requires that you stop being your own worst enemy. That you silence the self-doubt and replace it with self-coaching. It's not about toxic positivity. It's about being constructive, saying this is hard but I've got this, instead of I can't do it. The words you say to yourself in silence shape the actions you take in the world. Self-mastery also means having clear standards. It means living by principles, not moods. You don't need a rule book for every situation, you need a compass. Decide who you are and what you stand for, then act accordingly no matter the circumstances. Whether it's how you treat people, how you work, or how you respond to setbacks, let your principles lead you. Because when your standards are internal, external chaos can't shake you. And perhaps the most powerful part of self-mastery is that it creates real freedom. People often confuse freedom with doing whatever they want. But real freedom is the ability to choose wisely, to act with intention, to stay calm under pressure, to delay gratification for the sake of something better. When you master yourself, you're no longer ruled by impulse. You're no longer controlled by emotion, by fear, or by outside opinion. You live on your own terms, not recklessly, but intentionally. Self-mastery is not a destination you reach one day and check off. It's a lifestyle. It's waking up every day and choosing growth, even when it's uncomfortable. It's leading yourself before you try to lead anyone else. It's knowing that the hardest battle you'll ever fight is the one within, and fighting it anyway. In the end, mastering yourself isn't about being the best in the world. It's about being the best for the world. Because when you operate from strength, clarity, and integrity, you don't just elevate your own life, you become someone others can trust, respect, and follow. And that's real power. Not control over others, but full command over yourself. In today's world, it's easy to believe that progress only matters if it's seen. We live in an age where people broadcast their lives, chase validation through views and likes, and often feel invisible if they aren't constantly performing. But real growth, the kind that lasts, isn't built in front of an audience. It's built in the quiet, in the dark, in the unnoticed hours when no one is watching, no one is cheering, and no one is clapping. Working without an audience is one of the most powerful mindsets you can adopt because it shifts your focus from being impressive to being effective. When you work without an audience, you're not driven by approval.
You're not fueled by recognition. You're fueled by purpose. You begin to understand that the value of your effort is not tied to visibility. What matters is the work itself, the process, the discipline, the growth. It's about what you build in private that will eventually shape what you offer in public. And if you're only consistent when people are watching, you're not truly committed. You're performing. There is a quiet power in doing the right thing when no one knows, in showing up even when there's no immediate reward, in putting in effort that no one sees but you, because that's where character is built. That's where self-respect is earned. Working without an audience is not glamorous. It doesn't feed your ego. It doesn't deliver instant results. But it makes you resilient. It makes you real. And it makes you unstoppable in the long run. When you seek constant recognition, you become addicted to external motivation. You'll find yourself only pushing forward when the world is watching. But what happens when the audience disappears? What happens when no one is there to tell you good job? That's when most people quit. But not the ones who work in silence. They keep going. Because their work is not for applause. It's for growth. It's for alignment. It's for a vision bigger than ego. One of the most dangerous habits in today's culture is mistaking visibility for progress. Just because something is seen doesn't mean it's real. Just because something is liked doesn't mean it has value. The work that matters the most is often the least visible. It's the hours spent reading, learning, practicing, refining, failing, and trying again. It's the early mornings and late nights, the repetitions no one counts, the sacrifices no one knows about. That's the real work, and it's often done alone. Silence is uncomfortable for many people. They don't want to grow in silence. They want the world to see every step. But mastery demands patience, and patience requires the humility to build without attention, to learn without praise, to improve without posting. When you work without an audience, your intention becomes pure. You're not doing it for followers. You're doing it because it matters, because you want to become better, stronger, wiser. That kind of work changes you from the inside out. There's also a freedom in not needing to be seen. It removes pressure. It allows you to make mistakes, learn deeply, and focus fully without the burden of public judgment. You're free to explore, to fail, to evolve, because the point isn't to be perfect, it's to become real. And that process is always messy, always imperfect, but always worth it. Eventually, your results will speak louder than your updates. People may not see your work at first, but they will feel its impact. They will notice the clarity in your voice, the strength in your actions, the depth in your thinking. That doesn't come from performance, it comes from preparation. And preparation is almost always invisible. Don't confuse being unseen with being unsuccessful. The seed grows underground long before it breaks the surface. The muscle builds during quiet repetition, not just during competitions. Your future is being shaped in the work you're doing right now, even if no one's noticing. Especially if no one's noticing. So work, and keep working. Not because you want to be watched, but because you want to be ready. Because you want to honor the process. Because your mission is bigger than the moment. And when the spotlight does come, if it ever comes, you won't need it. Because you'll already know who you are, and what you've built. That's the reward of working without an audience. Confidence that comes from character, not from claps. Leadership is often misunderstood. Many think it's about having the loudest voice in the room, commanding attention, or standing at the front giving directions. But real leadership rarely looks like that. True leadership is quiet. It doesn't always raise its hand. It doesn't seek the spotlight. It simply shows up, consistently, authentically, and powerfully, through action. The strongest leaders don't need to announce their leadership. They lead through quiet example. When you lead quietly, you build trust without demanding it. You influence without force. You set the tone without ever needing to declare your intentions. People follow you not because you tell them to, but because they want to. They watch how you carry yourself. They observe how you respond under pressure. They learn more from what you do than what you say. And in a world full of noise, that kind of example stands out. Quiet leadership begins with integrity. It's doing what's right even when no one's looking. It's showing up early, keeping your word, holding your standards. It's the discipline of consistency. It's not about perfection, but about alignment between your values and your behavior. Quiet leaders don't preach principles they don't practice. They live what they believe. And that's what earns respect. You don't need a title to lead. You don't need a stage or a badge. What you need is clarity about who you are and what matters to you. Quiet leaders take full responsibility for their energy, their mindset, and their growth. They don't wait for permission to lead. They simply take ownership of their work, their actions, their influence, and by doing so, they create a ripple effect. They give others permission to step up, to raise their own standards, to follow by choice, not out of fear but out of inspiration. One of the most underrated qualities of quiet leadership is emotional control. In times of chaos, people look to those who stay steady, not the ones who yell the loudest, but the ones who stay grounded, calm, and intentional. Quiet leaders don't overreact. They respond with clarity. They listen more than they speak. They seek to understand before they seek to be understood. That calm presence becomes a source of stability for everyone around them. Quiet leadership also means leading yourself first. You can't expect to lead others if you can't lead your own thoughts, habits, and emotions. Quiet leaders hold themselves accountable, not to please others, but because they know their life is their responsibility. They don't make excuses. They don't wait to be motivated. They act from principle. That self-leadership is the foundation that everything else is built on. It's not always easy to lead this way. The world often rewards noise over substance. It celebrates charisma over character, but charisma fades. Quiet character builds over time, and when people encounter a leader who is steady, real, and self-disciplined, they feel it. It's not flashy, but it's unforgettable. Quiet leaders don't just impress, they impact. Another strength of quiet leadership is humility. It's the awareness that leadership is not about being better than others. It's about serving others. It's not about control, it's about contribution. Quiet leaders lift others up. They don't need credit. They're not threatened by others' success. They create space for others to grow. And that humility creates connection, because people feel safe, seen, and supported. Quiet leaders also understand the power of presence. Just being there fully present, fully engaged, can make a massive difference. You don't always need answers. Sometimes just your steadiness is enough. Your example is enough. When people see you showing up, doing the work, staying kind, staying focused, they learn. They're inspired. Not by your words, but by your walk. Over time, quiet leadership builds legacy, because what's built quietly is often built to last. It's not based on hype, it's based on habits. It's not about creating followers, it's about creating other leaders through your example, your encouragement, and your consistency. So don't underestimate the power of leading by quiet example.